Hello and welcome back to my tutorial series on VCV Rack 0.5. In today's episode, let's take a look at the drum sequencer by Hora Music. It's included in the Treasure Sequencer bundle for $15, or pounds rather. It's also included in the Treasure Complete bundle for $40. This drum sequencer goes really well with their mixer bundle and their drums bundle. So let's put those on let's add those modules so we can start playing with this thing. So here's the mixer module that we looked at in a previous episode. In order to use this guy, we need to add all the drum modules. So let's do that. We'll put the mixer at the bottom and then we'll add the drum modules above it. So we go to Hora Music and let's add all these ones. Bass, snare, toms, hand clap, soft bell, cymbals, and hi-hat. There we go, that's all of them. And then we have our mixer here. And we're going to route the output of the mixer to our sound card over here. First going through a VCA so I can control the whole volume. I could just use this, but we'll eventually get a little bit more complicated, so I want to do this because this won't be the final output. So the output of all of these go down here. So this is the output of the bass drum. This is just initial rigging, so we're not going to look at the drum sequencer quite yet. Snare drum goes down here. Toms. Guess what I should do is move this. Put these in the middle row. Might make a little bit more sense. Like that. And then put this one on top. Okay, then output of, let's see, this is hand clap. And this one, we have CB and CY, and then hi-hat. Don't really like the gray wire because you can barely see it. Alright, so they're all hooked up. So now to trigger these guys, so that's what this one comes in. So in order to trigger these guys, you have this top row. So we have bass drum. We'll hook him up to the trigger. Snare drum, we'll hook him up to the trigger. Hi-hat. Or sorry, HT. For toms and conga. MT and LT. And then our maracas and hand clap. And then our soft bell and our cymbals, cymbal trigger, cowbell trigger. Everybody needs a cowbell trigger. And then closed hat. And then open hat. Alright, it's hooked up now. Hooray. So maybe in order to not have wires on this thing, what is the best placement? Maybe like that. That might be the best. Because I'm trying to explain this model, so I don't want a bunch of wires crossing it. Alright, so it's obviously not doing anything. There's a run button. It is running. You can see the light blinking slowly across. It's currently on instrument bass drum. It's on pattern 1, and here's the tempo. This lets us do every fourth note. And then in theory, it should be playing. Let's turn up our volume. You can hear the bass drum going on, so we can put a pattern in. Okay, here's our bass drum pattern 1. So if I select pattern 2, there is no pattern for pattern 2. If I go back to pattern 1, Now notice it doesn't change immediately. The pattern has to end for it to change. It only changes when this red thing goes to the very end. It doesn't change instantly as soon as you switch this pattern, which is kind of nice because you're not getting interrupted patterns. The pattern has to complete before the pattern can change. All right, let's do something a bit more interesting over here. Go back to the bass drum, get rid of those. Something random. Go back up here, tune this a bit. So basically I'm cycling through the instruments to setting up a pattern. So setting up pattern 1. Let's see. Got our hand clap. That's kind of. So here's our mixer that we can control the volume of each of these. So you can obviously adjust the tempo. All right, so that's how you set up a pattern 1. Now what's kind of cool is you can right click and you can say copy pattern, switch to pattern 2, right click, paste pattern. And now if you run it, it's the same as it was. Okay. There's pattern 3. There's pattern 1. Right click clear pattern. So that deletes not only just this instrument, but all the instruments in this pattern. So don't click that button unless you really mean to. Let's go to pattern 1. Right click, clear instrument. So this instrument's cleared for that pattern. So it clears the instrument on that pattern, but not on this pattern. So if you remember on this pattern, we had a bass, the bass kick. Right click, clear, clears all these notes. All right. So what do these other buttons do? So we have this row is called A, and that's what this is right here. So if you run this one, you can see it cycling between 1 and 16 for row A. Now if you switch this to B, it's going to cycle from 1 to 16 for row B. So each pattern can have A and B, and you can flip between them with this. And if you want doubled length, you can do AB. So we'll just go all the way to the end of A and then all the way to the end of B. So now you have a 32-step pattern instead of a 16-step pattern. But let's say you just wanted an 8-step pattern or a 4-step pattern, so you adjust this length guy. So if you set this length somewhere in the middle, somewhere around there, now you have an 8-step pattern. Now if you switch this to AB, you have back a 16 pattern, but it's cycling kind of these subnotes. So if you put it all the way to the end, it's a 1-note pattern. Very exciting. All right. Let's see, what else does this do? So you also have reset. So if you go back to this guy, so if you click reset, it jumps back to the beginning. Now, of course, you can add CV voltage to control whether it's running, control whether it resets, and control the length automatically. I'll talk about the CV in a second. You also have the tempo, and you have a CV control over the tempo. So if you were to go add a LFO and put the square wave in there, run this dude. So now he's operating at the rate of the LFO. So obviously you can make him run as fast or slow as you want to. There is no output for the tempo if you don't have this hooked up. So if you want to control other things, it's probably best to input the tempo yourself. See the ACC accent. I don't believe there's an instrument for that he supplied that is one of those. So you can hook that up to whatever you want. So if you were to jump to pattern, yeah. Now you also have this 1 through 4, and this is for fills. So if we were to go to 1 right here, and just set this up to all bass drum, for example. Let's turn the tempo up a bit. So there's a pure bass drum pattern. Go back to pattern 1. And then what I can do is I can choose the fill I want to play. Like I can click one of these 4 buttons corresponding to these colors. So I want to play fill 1. And when I click this button, it's going to play that fill. Or if I input control voltage here. So let's listen to that. Here it's playing pattern 1. I click this button, it switches to the fill. Now notice it switches instantly, so I'm like in the middle. And if I click that button, notice it switches, and then it will switch back it'll switch back to the pattern 1 as soon as it's done with the fill. So that's how that works. And then you can control voltage this to select it. Let's take a look at that real quick. So let's do kind of like a simple pattern like this for 2 and something like that. And then something else random. Let's put let's see, a mute, and then something like this should work. I haven't tried it myself, so. So when it's fully on, this is all the way up to 10, it's selecting the last pattern. Let's move the scope over so you can see it. Let's turn this volume down. I wonder if it's just hitting the button, not actually selecting. Yeah, what it looks like this control voltage is a way to automatically press this button, but it does not select which of these to fire. Let's try what this one does. So I think that's playing the last pattern. So one of these should be, yeah, there's our fill 1 at 8.1 volts. So basically it's selecting from 0. So if I go all the way to 0, here's our pattern 1. Somewhere around here should be pattern 2. Here's our pattern 3, and so on. So you can use control voltage to select the pattern, including the fills. And then this is the fill button if you want to automatically switch to it. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's go to a blank pattern, pattern 4. Clear the pattern. All right. So what does this tap button do? So as it's running, kind of like playing a piano, you can tap it to light up those notes. See, now these notes are now lit up. So if I just tap this button real quick, all the notes are lit up. You can also use CV to automatically play. So let's put in a beat like this on BD, and let's use the output of BD to go into the tap signal. So now whenever bass drum fires, it's going to play onto whatever I've selected. So it's almost like a copy paste in this kind of routing. You can of course route this to whatever you want, but that's an example. All right, so now you also have the CV sequence right in the middle. One thing I've found, so what you can do is so this is the output for the CV sequence. Let's scope that, take a look at what that's doing. I really don't like these. All right, so nothing's happening because these are all basically off or at 0. So if you're to manually turn these, you can see that they're getting values. So let's right click and randomize this guy. And now all of these CVs will have values, as you can see in the scope. So you can of course hook this up to some kind of VCO if you want. Volts per octave. And then route that to, let's say, a mixer. And then route our output of our other mixer into this channel. And our output of our VCO into this channel. And then all the way, and the master mixer goes through this guy. So now you should be able to hear a really crazy VCO because the pitch range is not controlled. So you can control that with, like we did before, with a VCA or even better actually. Let's use the Bafacco dual attenuverter. Go in here and out here. So if you just give it a little bit, it's like multiplying for a very little bit. And then you can offset it to like kind of push it down into a range you like. So obviously this is not playing anything in terms of quantization. So these notes are kind of random and all over the scale. So if you want to quantize it, you know, hook it up to a quantizer. So let's hook it up to, I think this one. Yeah, this one's fine. So let's just select the C major scale, all the white notes. Go in and out. Too many that are like the same. Just randomly happen to pick the same notes over and over again, so it sounds kind of nuts. You get the kind of idea. Okay, so that's a CV sequence. So you can kind of use this, and this is the same kind of thing where you have A and B and A plus B. So this is row A and this is row B. I don't think you do not have patterns on this guy. So these knobs don't change as you switch between patterns. So because we randomized the instrument, all these patterns are all nuts now. At least on pattern 1, surprisingly. So that just doesn't sound good. Get rid of this volume. Let's see, is there anything else? So there's this first step, last step, and ACC. ACC is just another instrument. I don't think Hora includes an ACC instrument, so you can hook it up to whatever you want, as I understand. Actually, maybe what it is, oh, I see what it is. It's supposed to be for these accent ones. So I guess you could rig it up so it's accenting all of these, or maybe Pacific ones, depending on what you want to do. You know, so you can route. So if you want accents on these specific steps, then it's going to give you that. Let's also scope this last step and first step and see what that looks like. So I think the last step goes high as soon as it's over here. Let's turn up the length all the way. So it's there, yep. So as soon as it gets to the end, whatever is controlled by the length, this last step will go high, and then the first step will go high. So if you want to trigger something at the beginning or end of the sequence, you can. I think that's mostly it for this thing. Like I said, it goes pretty well with the other modules Hora Music has made. The other thing we didn't look at last time is there is actually, well, I've got this rigged up. Let's get back to something normal. So let's initialize this patch. So this is the bass drum initialized, the black version. And if you go to Hora Music, actually gives you two different bass drums, one called Treasure VCV and one called Treasure Vault. So as I understand it, the Vault one uses, let me click over here, read what he says. So he says the Vault uses a high quality DSP made by Leonardo Luagua Ruse Black Modules. Vault has a higher filtering quality, but both have their own interesting character. The other one is based on the VCV DSP. That's the white modules. So let's look at the VCV ones. So it's an identical module. So let's also hook up the trigger for the bass drum over here, and the trigger for the accent over here. And then we'll send the output to, I don't know, we'll just use this mixer. So I got a mixer. All right, so we can listen to either one of these. So this one, this red one, this is the one we were listening to. Should be, right? Nope, I routed the wrong one. So there's the one we were listening to. And here's Volt. So the white one sounds pretty good. So Volt's DSP is pretty nice. So if you do own the drum collection, be sure to check out the white modules because they do sound different. All right, I think that's about it for the drum sequencer. There is another module included next to the drum sequencer, the frequency divider, which looks pretty simple. You take an input, and it should give you an output. So you can divide it by 8. See, it's 8 times as slow as this one. Divide it by 2, now it's 2 times as slow. Divide it by 4. Or you can reset it whenever you want procedurally. And then there's 2 of them. I think that's it for that frequency divider. Kind of a simple module. I think that'll conclude this episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time.